So Minneapolis is on fire because, as we all know by now, the best response to a black man being killed by the cops is to steal a big screen TV and burn down the local liquor store. It's been nearly 6 years since Black Lives Matter got its start in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri. 6 years. And they still can't get their heads out of their own rear ends long enough to be marginally decent, let alone credible. It all started when George Floyd, a black man, was seen on video being pinned to the ground by a white Minneapolis police officer who decided that the best way to restrain an unarmed man was to park it on his windpipe for a solid 8 minutes while he repeatedly complained that he couldn't breathe. Floyd died a short time later at the local hospital. The officers involved have been fired and the incident is being investigated. This seems to be a pretty cut and dry case of police brutality. I'm not sure how else you could slice it, and we'll see how the investigation turns out. But rather than simply take to the streets to demand justice for Floyd, protesters decided to break into a bunch of stores and burn down some buildings again, shamelessly using Floyd's death as a cover to steal stuff and wreck their own town again. A Target, a grocery store, and several liquor stores were looted, among others. This is the scene inside the Target where gobs of people in masks ran through the aisles, piling up carts with anything they could grab and making off with it like a bunch of brainless animals. An AutoZone store near the police precinct was set on fire and completely destroyed, just one of the many stores that were torched. This right here, this was a construction site being developed for low-income housing. In fact, NPR weather reports that so many buildings were set on fire, the smoke started popping up on weather radars. Dozens of cops had to show up to protect the firefighters who were trying to put out the flames because they were being attacked. Reporters were pulled from the scenes. The Metro has shut down an entire line indefinitely over safety concerns. You want to know why people support Black lives, but no one with half a brain supports Black Lives Matter? Why this movement gets exactly zero sympathy from decent humans? It's not because Black lives don't matter. It's because apparently this movement thinks that no one else's lives matter. The guy who runs that AutoZone, the owner of the liquor stores, the employees at that Target, what the heck did they do to anybody to deserve to have their place of business torn apart and burned down because what? You were pissed at the cops? What about the ordinary people in that community who now have to go rebuild these places and clean up this mess? Many of these businesses have been hurting for weeks now thanks to the shutdown. And your response to injustice is to set them on fire? What about the people who were set to move into that housing unit? What happens to them? I wasn't in Minneapolis last night, but I did report from Ferguson in 2014. And you know who were the main victims of Black Lives Matter there? Black people and immigrants. Ordinary folks whose entire livelihoods were destroyed because a bunch of morons decided to take advantage of a man's death to lift a few big screens and smash in the local beauty salon. And don't tell me that the majority of protesters yesterday were good and peaceful and the whole thing was ruined by a few bad apples, because that excuse sure didn't fly in Charlottesville. And it's not going to fly now that half of downtown Minneapolis is a big pile of ashes. Oh, and by the way, just a note, this isn't a black thing. There were more than a few white folks in the mix there too. I watched one white lady come barging out of the Target store with about 7 purses in her hands and another with a blender. So, whole lot of bad stereotypes being reinforced here. Congrats, guys. This is so shameful, it is nearly beyond words. What's more, it's selfish. It rips attention away from the man who lost his life, likely because some cops made a really bad call and used excessive force. And we're all concerned about that. Many of us have demanded an investigation and justice for Floyd. We want to hold bad cops accountable. We are disgusted when people lose their lives needlessly. We've been demanding justice. I follow an awful lot of prominent conservatives on Twitter, and I haven't seen a single one of them defending what happened to George Floyd. But this is where the entire Black Lives Matter movement loses all credibility. They scream for justice for people who were killed after committing crimes by going out and committing more crimes. They rant about black men being unfairly branded as criminals, then go out and act like criminals. In what world does that help? And if the organizers of these demonstrations have a problem with this kind of behavior, I sure don't see them disavowing it or trying to get their thugs under control. So it doesn't seem much like this is about getting justice for black lives. It is about having an excuse to pop off and rob people and destroy a city because you've got nothing better to do with your time and because you have nothing constructive to add. So congratulations on once again proving yourselves to be the exact thing that you complain others assume you are. And that's your Reality Check, America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, that you like us on Facebook and Twitter. and stay sane out there.